Welcome back. Another episode, Empty Gym Podcast, joined again here by Adam Pollard. I'm Jack Hobson. Today, continuing on the college basketball previews, we got the SEC and the Big East today, so excited to get into those. First, we'll start with a little baseball. Game 7 last night for the Diamondbacks and Phillies. Game 7 the night before for Rangers and Astros. Rangers, both road teams winning. Rangers get the win over the Astros to go to the World Series, and the Diamondbacks get the win over the Phillies.
Yeah, both Diamondbacks and Rangers were both down 3-2, and they go 4-0. Both of them combined in the away at the opposing team's stadium. So that was pretty cool. Being out here in Arizona, it's pretty cool to see the Diamondbacks be in the position that they are because um, for the longest time, the Diamondbacks have just been like a for sure not making the playoffs team. And it honestly kind of felt like that at the beginning of this year. I mean, they definitely had a better shot, but I don't think anyone would have put them in the World Series winning the NL pennant.
No, I mean, we're I saw some tweet, uh, not to get sad boy hours, but the Cubs lost 15 of their last 22, and if one of those games changes, including I think it was 1-6 against the Diamondbacks in the last 22 games. If one of those games changes, the Diamondbacks would not have made the playoffs. I don't know if that means the Cubs would have, because I know it's kind of getting down to the race there with the Cubs, Reds, and Diamondbacks. But yeah,
I didn't
Diamondbacks.
hear that, but I did hear that if Seiya Suzuki caught that ball, that the Diamondbacks would not be in the playoffs. But here they are.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what could have happened there? But yeah, Diamondbacks go from uh, barely scraping into that last wild card spot to now in the World Series, and especially against a team as hot as the Phillies were, looked like they were pretty destined to go to back-to-back pennant champs, and then another shot at the World Series. Could have been another shot at the Astros. Ends up being the Rangers, but the credit the Diamondbacks. They got kind of a young, scrappy team. I know Marte's been lighting it up so far in the playoffs. Then you got a rookie in Corbin Carroll, who's just been pretty solid this playoffs, and for a rookie especially. But it's been a fun playoffs to watch. Like we kind of said, those wild card and division series were not very good, not very competitive. But these league championship series definitely sufficed that. Both going 7 games.
Yeah, and today's a big day for the ratings police, with the being a Rangers and Diamondbacks World Series. I've already seen stuff. People are all over it. The ratings are going to be terrible. Why would the MLB do this? Why would they put the Astros in it? Why would they put the Phillies in the World Series? But I mean, it's the World Series. Like it's going to be competitive. The Diamondbacks are coming in riding pretty high right now after going Game 6, Game 7 wins at the bank. Is the bank a fraud? Do we need to have that conversation?
The bank could be a fraud. Bank could be a fraud. Didn't look like it for the longest time, and then you go back home up 3-2 and give two away. It, I was just not expecting that at all. Even once, like you have the Diamondbacks win Game 6, and then it starts to get like people are a little concerned and everything, but still, the whole time I was like, it's the Phillies, like they got it. But Diamondbacks get the win, and the bank is in question now. Red October. Who
Yep.
knows if that's true or not?
I think I saw a stat that was Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, and Castellanos were 1-28 combined in game 6 and 7 at the plate. So it's kind of crazy they still had a shot to win. Like they weren't out of it by any means. I thought for sure that that eighth inning when they had 2 on, 2 out with Bryce Harper up, that
Yeah,
the floodgates were just going to open. Like whether or
yeah,
not he was going to hit a home run or whatever, but like I thought for sure the Diamondbacks were done right there.
yeah. That's just one of those like with the way the Phillies have been the last 2 years. Like it just seemed kind of storybook almost in a sense that Harper would come up with the game on the line, and then what he do? Flew out to left, I think.
Yeah.
So it looked like for a sec he looked pretty mad Looked like he might have just missed getting a good piece of wood on that ball, and could have been an RBI double, could have been a 3-run home run, but nevertheless, Diamondbacks have now made the World Series, and like you said, we kind of had this. I feel like we've had this a lot this year with like the ratings police. With started out with the Final Four,
Yep.
then the NBA Finals. Everyone's mad about it being Denver and the Heat. It was like it could have been Lakers Celtics if those conference finals went different. Then you had it with NHL, Vegas, and the Panthers. Then now you have it again with MLB with Diamondbacks and the Rangers. Rangers definitely not in a small market, but definitely not, I guess, like super enticing to the casual baseball fan. Whereas Phillies Astros repeat would have been really cool to see. But I think this is going to be still a fun World Series with two wild card teams that uh, I know the Rangers were always going to be in it because they were competing in the West, but could have been division winners, could have gotten that extra couple days off, but ended up having to. Uh, where did they start out? Because were they at Tampa?
I think they swept the Orioles.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they swept the Orioles in the. Well, no, they swept the Rays at home in the wild card, and then sweep the Orioles in the division series, and then now find a way to beat the Astros. So I think it's going to be a fun World Series between two pretty competitive teams that were definitely not World Series favorites coming into this playoffs.
Yeah, speaking of the Astros, we just did have some breaking news that came out about 30 minutes ago, I'd say. That being that Dusty Baker is retiring as the manager of the Houston Astros. So sad day for baseball because, like we talked about it earlier, Dusty's a good guy. Um, he's just kind of one of those guys you want to root for. So yeah, tough day for baseball because we're gonna miss seeing Dusty in the dugout.
Yeah, Dusty, we talked about it last week, but Dusty was definitely one of those guys that made the Astros, at least for me, less hateable than they were. Uh, so sad to see him go. I just got that alert just now, so crazy that great timing by us
Great
on that.
timing.
But yeah, Dusty, immediate reaction. Like you said, sucks to see him go. Um, Excited for him to be able to enjoy his retirement, though. I'm sure he will live it up. Uh, and sucks that it kind of ends on this, losing in the LCS after giving up two at home. But definitely a great career. Obviously got a couple World Series. So good career for Dusty. Sad to see him hang him up.
Yeah, for sure. But like you said, I'm very excited for this World Series. I think it's gonna be pretty cool to watch, especially being someone who lives in the Phoenix area. That and when I like my first year out here, I we when we moved out here, the Suns were playing in the NBA Finals, so kind of having the Phoenix sports rise up and just kind of being around that atmosphere is pretty cool.
You gonna try and make it to a game?
We'll see because I think the lowest ticket price that we were finding was like $300. So if the Diamondbacks, I think if they go down 2-0 and lose two at Texas, then the tickets might go down.
Yeah.
But just for the, I still think the fans will still go. I mean, there's no reason they're gonna miss World Series games because their team's down 2-0.
Yeah.
But a little bit out of my price range, but we'll see if we can get to one.
Yeah, gotta find a way. Uh, Anything else on baseball?
No, you got a prediction though?
Uh, I'll go Diamondbacks in six. I think they're really hot right now. I think Rangers are really hot too. That's what you get with the World Series though, is two hot teams going up against each other. But I think if Scherzer had a little bit more time to kind of get back in the swing of things and everything, I'd probably side with them. But I think not having Scherzer, not having DeGrom, obviously will hurt them. And I think Zach Gallen might be the best pitcher in the playoffs right now. He's up there, but so it'll be interesting to see how the Diamondbacks do. But I'll take them in six.
I think I'm gonna take D-backs in seven. I'm gonna
Another
give myself that extra game.
give yourself an extra game.
Yeah.
Probably smart, but
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see. Into basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, we did not talk about this before, but I guess we can quickly go over the NBA games last night before we get into our whole preview. But just two NBA games last night. Nuggets beating the Lakers and Suns beating the Warriors. Good to see the NBA's back. Gonna try to watch it a little bit more this year. But yeah, like I said, pretty much just mention it. I don't have too much on those games. I watched them, but uh, we're college basketball, not NBA. But just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I was unable to watch the Nuggets Lakers game, but I did get to catch about halftime and on of the Suns Warriors game. Um, Quick analysis of that game. I think both the Suns and the Warriors are going to need time to mend all those new changes in. With the Suns, you pretty much have a whole entire new team. Bradley Beal didn't even play last night, but their whole bench is going to need some work, and I think you're going to see a lot more um, of that roster being revamped, especially on that bench. I don't know how many minutes you can get from Drew Eubanks or Utah Watanabe, like those kind of guys.
Yeah,
And I don't think that they can be playing those uh, bigger minutes that they have previously not seen in their NBA careers. And then I think with the Warriors, just going to take time to figure out this Chris Paul situation.
that's what I was thinking too.
But it looked well. I mean, I think in the third quarter, Curry and Chris Paul combined for 21 points, and the Suns only scored 19.
Yeah.
So um, it's just gonna take some getting used to. I mean, that's just like every other season for any team. But the Nuggets do look really good, and I think they could be a favorite. They are a favorite to repeat.
Yeah, I think it'll take a little time, especially having like it was a move that always didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Chris Paul going to the Warriors because he already got Steph Curry is the best point guard in the game, and then Clay is your other backcourt mate there. So it always was kind of a questionable move to me, but I think they'll definitely make it work. It for being the first game last night, I thought it looked pretty good, and I think it's only going to get better from here. Like I was expecting a lot of, uh, I guess like I don't know, friction is the word or not, but
Because
just kind
those
of
two have had some beef when like the it was like the 18 Rockets when Chris Paul was on them with James Harden and the
yeah,
Warriors and when them went at it. I think there was some beef, especially between Steve Kerr and Chris Paul.
yeah, but yeah. So it's just gonna be kind of interesting, kind of look at that, see how that all flows together. But like I said, for game one, it looked pretty good. Interesting. We'll just kind of see how it goes with Chris Paul coming in in a bench role. I don't know if that was exactly what he's looking for, but at the end of the day, he's probably also just wanting a ring at this point, and I
Yeah.
think I think that team's capable of doing it. So that'll be something to look for throughout the year. And then tonight, Wembanyama's debut. I'm excited to watch that. Bulls debut. Obviously, we're excited for that. But yeah, NBA's back.
Yeah, like you said, we do have a full slate of games. The Bulls are 2.5 point favorites against the Oklahoma City Thunder, so looking to go 82-0 this year.
Can't go 82-0 if you don't go 1-0.
Yep.
That's the start. And then I guess also one thing that we can just cover really quickly. I'm just thinking of all these things off the top of my head that I didn't write notes about at all. But Bears won this weekend, which was nice. Uh, Tyler Banjit might be the guy.
Tyson.
Tyson. He'd probably be more likely to be the guy if I knew his first name. But Tyson Banjit could be the guy.
Yeah, it was different because the style that he plays versus what Fields plays is a lot different. And I wouldn't I'm not gonna go out and say that like he should be the guy and we should dump Fields because he won us a game and all this stuff. Like that's way over exaggeration, but I mean he's playing well.
Yeah,
Like you can't deny that.
yeah. That was said in jest a little bit, but at the same time, like he looked really good. And granted,
Hmm.
like the Raiders didn't have Jimmy G, but at the same time, I think they're missing Nate Hobbs, Illinois alum, shout out from their secondary. But other than that, I mean, like obviously the Raiders defense isn't something crazy or anything, but he still played pretty well for his first NFL start. So it'll just kind of be fun. Gives a little bit more excitement for the year, especially with Fields out. Like I think we're all kind of looking at Fields being out as like this part of the season is just gonna suck, and like we're just gonna have to get through it. But Tyson Bagent making it fun.
I feel like we should give a quick shout out to Matt Eberflus. He does have that defense playing pretty well right now.
He does,
I
yeah.
will give him some credit there. I think Jalen Johnson had 2 picks in that game. One was a pick six. But we're not giving up a whole lot of points.
Yeah.
So bonus, I guess.
Maybe Eberflus should demote himself to DC and
I wouldn't
bring.
hate that at all. Like I actually don't think that's a bad idea. And has that like ever happened before?
I can't imagine it has, but
It
it
probably
like
has
it
happened like once,
yeah. Like
like maybe a while ago, but I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world.
yeah, I would not be upset about it at all. I think the probability of it happening is like below 1% just because with the way the NFL works now, like I don't see a guy ever like
Oh yeah.
being fired as a head coach, but like, hey, you want to stay on as defensive coordinator? Like that's not going to happen. But I, if somehow, some way it did happen, it would create a very weird dynamic in the locker room. But I wouldn't hate it. But
I think if the Bears, the rumor is right now that Harbaugh is going to come out of Michigan and come back to the NFL. I think if Harbaugh does take that Bears job, that there's a 0% chance that Eberflus is anywhere near that organization. Harbaugh will boot him out so far.
yeah, yeah,
Harbaugh will clean house too,
Harbaugh's going to clean house.
which I am
Think
completely fine with.
there's not a whole lot
Yeah,
of house to clean out right now, but yeah, that another other Bears news also. Rumors of Jim Harbaugh. So let's see if that comes to fruition or not. I think the NCAA will play a very large role in that as well. Uh, see what
absolutely.
see what happens with these sanctions going on. But
And I also think that Michigan's success is a huge part of it as well.
yeah, yeah. All right, now are we good for basketball?
Yeah,
All right, I kind of went on some tangents there, but let's get into basketball. Just some basic overview news and notes first. We got some exhibitions starting up. Had some over the weekend. Illinois played an exhibition against blanking. Doesn't matter. Some D3. Uh, but had some exhibitions going this weekend. Some of the bigger ones, some D1s versus D1s. St. Mary's went out to Hawaii for Maui charity game. Beat Hawaii 92-58. Not a whole lot to see there except St. Mary's looks pretty good. Mahaney looks really good. I watched that game a little bit on rerun, but St. Mary's looks like they can really be a contender in the not necessarily contender. Like obviously Gonzaga's going to win that league, but some good competition for Gonzaga at least, and definitely could see them picking a game off. But other ones, Ohio State beat Dayton 78-70 in a really cool exhibition that they did for mental health in Ohio. So that was cool to see all the stuff going on there. As for the game itself, Bruce Thornton for Ohio State had 21 points on 7-9 shooting, 3 of 4 from three. He looked really good, looked really in control of that offense. Dayton's going to be a really good team, and I think Ohio State looking that good early helps a lot, especially coming from a guard like Thornton, being able to lead that offense. Jamison Battle, the Minnesota transfer, also had 15. And then Dayton, I wouldn't look too hard into this for Dayton fans. I know they're probably one to win it, but I mean, Deron Holmes, your best player, only played 16 minutes and played like 2 or 3 minutes in the whole second half, something like that. So definitely winning this game was not a big deal for them. But those were some of the exhibitions that we've had so far. Coming up, some other D1 versus D1, either charity exhibitions or the secret scrimmages. Uh, this Friday, we got West Virginia versus George Mason. Saturday, a really good one in Arkansas, Purdue. That'll be exciting to watch. Sunday's the big day. You got Alabama Wake Forest. I think that's just a secret scrimmage. So no TV for that one. Kansas, Illinois. Excited for that one. I will be in attendance. Tennessee, Michigan State. I believe that one is also secret scrimmage, but I can't remember for sure. And then Texas Tech, Texas A&M, and South Carolina, Wofford. So some cool exhibitions coming up.
I like how they call them secret scrimmages, and like they're totally leaked out to everybody.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
has there been a secret scrimmage that doesn't get leaked out? Like, I feel like the whole point of a secret scrimmage is so that they don't have to like put, a bunch of TV and all this stuff into it and all this, uh, fans and all that stuff, event staff, so that they can just be like, hey, this guy's on our team's really good, by the way.
yeah.
He's playing really good against this team.
It's definitely just all for like the narratives and stuff
Yeah.
like that. All for trying to get it out. Like, hey, if this Illinois Kansas game was a secret scrimmage, hypothetically, it'd be like if Illinois loses by 20, it's like, hey, you know what? Trying to gel things together, but this guy looked pretty good. This guy looked good. We need to work on this a little bit, but Kansas is a good team. We'll be fine. Uh, and then if Illinois beats Kansas, it's like, holy shit, we
Yeah.
might be the best team in the country. Like, whatever way you spin it, it's like, or you're just like, it's preseason, it doesn't matter at all. Like, who cares? And the cool thing about the secret scrimmages too is that they do a lot of like segmented stuff and kind of, it's not a traditional like 20-minute halves, 40-minute game. They do a lot of like 10-minute segments and then some end of game segments, end of half segments. So it definitely be a little bit more confusing for like a casual fan to come watch and like figure out like what all's going on, but makes it more interesting, I think, for uh, people like really interested in the game and stuff like that, be able to see how the players are reacting in different situations that you can kind of control more than if you had in the whole flow of a game. But uh, it is fun that a lot of these games are going to be televised and going to be played like regular 40-minute games, especially this Arkansas Purdue one. It's on Saturday, so I can't imagine too many people are going to be watching it live with college football going on. But that is definitely one that I'm going to be watching on rerun the next day. But got some good ones going on. And then also another thing, your Duke Blue Devils agreeing to a 6-year extension with head coach John Shire. So looks like they like what they see so far from Coach K's predecessor, and Shire's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I was that was one of those things that everyone was kind of waiting on is when, because you knew it was going to happen. You knew
Yeah,
that like, the extension was coming. You're just kind of waiting on when it was going to happen. Um, as far as other Duke news goes, I'm trying to pull it up, but former Duke recruit, who is now at Indiana, Mackenzie Mbako, was actually arrested on Sunday. Did you see that?
I did.
I'm trying to figure. I can't remember what exactly it was for.
He
It just says
if
misdemeanor charges.
yeah, the story that I saw was that he went to the Taco Bell drive-through
Yes,
in Bloomington. Uh,
that's what it
well,
was.
I believe there's conflicting stories about this rumor. So I guess believe what you want to believe, but
All
supposedly
alleged.
allegedly the Taco Bell was not technically closed yet, but the employees of the Taco Bell were taking a smoke break,
Oh,
not a traditional smoke break either, a more Taco Bell-ish smoke break. But
okay.
um, and what's his name again?
Mackenzie Mbako.
Yeah, Mbako is going through the drive-through, and he pulls up to the thing, and he starts like yelling at him, like through the through the
The speaker
like the
or the window?
speaker. At first, he's yelling at him through the speaker, I think, and then no one's responding. And then he goes up to the window and like sees someone and starts yelling at him, and he just like refused to leave, which uh, that wasn't the problem. The problem, I believe, was when Taco Bell employees called the cops and uh, they came, and then he still refused to leave when the cops were there, and then he ended up getting arrested. But
Hey,
uh,
we've all wanted Taco Bell really
Paul,
bad.
Yeah, but interesting stories from
Yeah, I
Bloomington
saw
right
that,
now.
and that was something very interesting because it does pertain to my Duke Blue Devils. Not really much anymore, but I was very excited to have him uh, be on this year's team, and then Filipowski came back, which I would rather have. I think that most Duke fans would say that. Um, but yeah, so he's in Indiana now, and having some troubles at Taco Bell.
The Durham Taco Bell was probably happy that he picked
Yeah,
IU too.
yeah,
They don't have to deal with that. But yeah, it's honestly like, regardless of how funny the story is, it will be interesting to see how that goes with him with the legal stuff with it happening so close to the start of the season. So I can't imagine Mike Woodson won't get that figured out somehow. I'm sure he's friends with some judges and lawyers in Bloomington, but uh, we'll see if he's able to start the season. I can't imagine he wouldn't, but we'll see. All right, that's all I got for news and notes. You got anything else?
let's go to SEC.
Let's get into the SEC. So, like we've kind of done in the past, we'll start off with some of the ranked teams. First, you got at number 9, Tennessee, 14, Arkansas, 15, Texas A&M, 16, Kentucky, 24, Alabama, and then a couple teams receiving votes in Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida. A couple storylines that I just want to talk about real quick before we kind of dive into some of the top teams. Uh, it's been 4 years since Kentucky has made it to a second weekend. Uh, we'll talk about it in a second, but Cal kind of going back to his old ways of just getting the top freshman class. He's been hit the portal a lot more the last couple of years, so we'll see if getting back to going to mostly freshmen will be what gets him to the second weekend.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that was one of the things I had to talk about for Kentucky. It's kind of the if it isn't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. I don't think it was necessarily exactly broke when Cal did first start to go to the portal, but they do bring in the number one recruiting class, and I think they have three freshmen in their starting lineup right now who are all 5 stars.
Yeah,
So it'll be something interesting to see, and I think that's what Cal does best. So um, you could be seeing Kentucky make it out of the first weekend for the first time in 4 years.
yeah. We'll dive deeper into it in a second, but like you said, I mean, it's kind of like everyone when the portal started was all kind of very infatuated with it and very much the thought of being able to. I know Brad Underwood says it all the time, but to be able to get old and stay old from year to year, uh, the ability to do that through getting proven transfers, whether that's at the high major level or mid major, low major guys trying to see if they can make that jump up to the high major level, and then having a quicker leash on some young guys who might not have produced like you thought they would have, and just kind of kicking them to the curb and having them go try to be a bounce back transfer at like a lower level team. But yeah, gonna be we'll just see how the getting the big freshman classes will go for Kentucky. Uh, Another thing that I want to talk about too, which kind of includes the first 3 or 4 teams, something like that, that we're going to talk about. But Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas all had very successful regular seasons the last couple of years, especially Tennessee. Uh, for I feel like Tennessee's been pretty good for the last like 6 or 7 years, and then Alabama and Arkansas the last 3 or 4 or 5 years or so have really started to rise up throughout the regular season. Uh, Big question for them: when are they going to take that leap to the Final Four? I know it's a joke with Rick Barnes. It might start to become a joke with Nate Oates. I think Musselman's got some leeway a little bit from that because he's made the Elite Eight a couple times, but hasn't quite made that big jump to the Final Four. So interesting to see if this is the year that one of those 3 teams can take that jump and get over the hump to the Final Four.
Yeah, like specifically looking at Rick Barnes, that has been the joke where that Tennessee does have a very good regular season and they get to the tournament and just lay an egg. So he did make the Sweet 16 last year, so you got that first step They do have a really good team this year, so yeah, it will be interesting to see if Tennessee, especially if Rick Barnes can break that narrative and maybe make it to Elite Eight Final Four.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's just go into Tennessee right now. Looking at them last year, 25-11, like you mentioned, that Sweet 16 loss. Uh, they are the media preseason number one this year. Just came out in the last couple days, last week or so, something like that. They are the media preseason number one. They only really lose Olivier Nakamhawa, I believe is how you pronounce that. He transferred off to Michigan, but you bring back the backcourt of Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi. Ziegler is a guy that I've loved since he was a freshman. He reminds me a lot of like an old mid 2000s, like late 2000s, early 2010s Big East guard with the cornrows and everything, just like really tough, gritty guard. And then Vescovi, great shooter from three. So they got the backcourt. Uh, Big transfer guard that they got, Dalton Connect, uh, kid from Northern Colorado, lights out shooter, 20 points per game, shot 38% from three this past year. So you'd like to see that percentage go a little bit up as he has a little bit more space to work with some more talent around him. Uh, I think the big key for Tennessee this year, uh, keep seeing progression from Josiah Jordan James. He's into his fifth year now. He's going to be your big man or your four guy this year. So need to see that progression, and then sophomore leap from their big man Toby Awaka taking over for I can never remember the other it's like Zavas or something like that.
Kyrios Plavsic.
Plavsic. I always got Plavsic and Vescovi confused with each other, but yeah, Awaka taking over for Plavic as the starting big man. So I want to see a big jump from him. But I think those are the keys to success for Tennessee this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Plavsic. They do lose him as well. Um, the, he was terrible on the basketball court, terrible. But he was the enforcer. Like he was one of those guys
Big
who
time, big time.
the smaller guards did not want to attack the basket when he was in the game because you knew it was almost like the bad boys Pistons. Like you were either gonna have to make it and just get the foul, or like you were gonna have to dish it out, or whatever. Like, but you either way, if you get in that realm where he's at, like it wasn't gonna be an easy bucket. Um, he did punch Kyle Filipowski in the throat and I believe in like the gut twice in that round of 32 game. So very glad to see him go. Was not a big fan of him. Um, but you mentioned Vescovi. I think he's one of those guys that if he's on and gets hot, he can obliterate a game and he can just turn the game over on its side. And he averaged 12 and a half points last year. So will be good to see him back with Zakai Ziegler. And the key to success, I think, is just keeping Zakai Ziegler healthy. Again, because last year he was hurt. So keeping him healthy and keeping that backcourt healthy is going to be the key to Tennessee's success this year.
Yeah, you definitely saw a drop off a little bit once Ziegler got hurt. They kind of figured it out towards the end of the regular season. Didn't quite get into the or got to the second weekend, but weren't able to get further than that with that Sweet 16 loss. But excited to see Zakai Ziegler back and fully healthy. Like you mentioned with Plavic kind of being that enforcer, that just got me thinking that like if you're a guard and you're getting guarded 94 feet by Ziegler the whole time, and then you finally get past him one or two times, and then you got to go up against Plavic in the post or at the rim, I do not envy that position at all. So that's something Awaka's got to really step up and take that role over because Tennessee's always been the last couple of years, especially been an awesome defensive team, and I don't think that's going to change too much. Vescovi could be better defensively. Ziegler's great defensively. Connect, uh, worry about him a little bit defensively coming up to a higher level. Wasn't the best defender at Northern Colorado. Didn't really have to be. He was more of their obviously their best offensive player. Uh, so I think Josiah Jordan James and Zakai Ziegler are the two that are really going to have to kind of bring back that or keep that defensive identity and that defensive intensity that Tennessee has to remain successful.
Yeah, speaking of Josiah Jordan James, I he is the predicted defensive player of the year. I see that as a very real possibility for him there.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they've always been, a great defensive team. So losing some guys, we'll see if that sticks around for them. But good on Tennessee.
One more thing, they do also bring in the 18th best recruiting class this year. They bring in guys Freddie Delone the fifth, J.P. Estrella, and Cameron Carr. J.P. Estrella is one of those guys to keep an eye on. I don't see major success in his first 2 years, but I think he's gonna be one of those guys who is in those plays those roles, those fifth years, those seniors that start in the Tennessee lineup. Because I believe right now they have two fifth years and a redshirt seniors in their projected starting lineup this year. So keep an eye on him. I believe he was actually recruited by Duke. Obviously he went to Tennessee, but just keep an eye on him because I think he's going to be really good in a couple of years.
Yeah, I think bringing in that guy like Connect really helps alleviate a lot of the pressure off these freshmen that can kind of come in a little bit smaller role and don't have to be as great off the start as you have with a team like Kentucky that we'll get to later. But uh, you kind of get that more like I said, that pressure taken off of those freshmen. They don't have to come in and be great right off the bat. They can kind of take their time and get used to everything. So I think that's a really good thing for Tennessee, kind of having that older experience and being able to let those freshmen get minutes and get time, but not as much pressure to be like a top two or three player in their rotation by any means. But with that, let's move on to Texas A&M if that's all right. 25-10 last year, had that first round loss to Penn State. The Almanac, the CBB Almanac from the guys at Three Man Weave that we reference a lot, has them projected as their SEC champs. Um, Texas A&M, a team that brings back pretty much everyone, uh, headlined by their backcourt, obviously, with Wade Taylor, who was the media picked preseason player of the year in the SEC, and Tyree Radford. Uh, Big up and down season for A&M last year. They were 6-5 at Christmas last year, uh, and then won 17 of their last 20 regular season games. So had that slow start, but really started to pick up momentum towards the end of the year. Obviously, trying to take that into this season. Didn't have the tournament appearance that they wanted to exactly with that first round loss, but a team that looked really not too great at the start of the year and kind of got going. Especially Wade Taylor was huge with that. Uh, Bringing a couple double-digit scoring guards transfers. Eli Lawrence from Middle Tennessee State and Jace Carter from UIC, kind of bringing back or providing some depth in the backcourt that they didn't really have last year. But I think the key for Texas A&M to kind of take that leap and be more consistent throughout the year is their front court. Henry Coleman, Julius Marble, the Michigan State transfer. Uh, they don't really have a whole lot of depth in the front court behind them, so those guys are going to be relied on a lot. And this is going to be definitely a guard driven team.
Yeah, you mentioned Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford. I think those two uh, probably could be the most underrated backcourt in the nation.
I agree. Yeah.
Those two guys are very good, and the SEC knows them, and it's not like a surprise when they come in and these guys they're going off on. It's like no, they know how to game plan for them, but still, they're able to take over games when they need to, and they control the flow of the game really well. A lot of their minutes this year are going to be coming from juniors, seniors, and graduates. So I think their whole starting lineup is, I'm sorry, it's two juniors, a graduate, and two seniors, and then their bench is mostly seniors and graduates. So a very old team. You're starting to see that more in college basketball. Obviously, we're having some of the COVID years float out now, but with the graduates and obviously the use of the transfer portal, you're seeing a lot of older starting lineups and older teams. And like you said with Tennessee, it definitely takes that pressure off of those freshmen and allows them to kind of mesh into the program and just the difference between high school and college basketball a lot easier.
Yeah, that experience is huge, especially for a team that did not really have uh, much expectations last year, and now has some pretty high expectations. Pretty much everyone has them either like 1, 2, or 3 in the SEC. So big expectations down in College Station this year. So I think having that veteran leadership, a lot of experience, whether that be with Texas A&M or not, with those two transfer guards. But they bring back, I think it was like 7 of their top 8 or something like that. Like they bring back a lot of guys from last year. So it'll be very nice for them to have that experience and be able to kind of be able to temper those expectations a little bit and face them instead of getting overpressured with them. But look for Texas A&M to have a really good year this year. I'm very excited to watch that backcourt.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the best team that Buzz Williams has had in his coaching career. So it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of take that next step and see how he does with as good as a team that he's ever had coming back in at the start of the season and see what he can do with it.
Yeah, he's another one of those coaches that has had a lot of success. One of the better coaches in the country, but kind of lacks those resume like sealers, I guess, in terms of like Final Fours, and obviously doesn't have a national championship. But had a lot of good teams at Marquette. But like you said, I think this might be his best one. So excited to see them. But good with Texas A&M. All right. Next, let's talk Alabama. Obviously, great year last year, 31-6. Had that Sweet 16 loss to San Diego State, who ended up being the national runner-ups. I believe Alabama was the number 1 overall seed last year, if I recall correctly. But pretty much a completely new team this year. Bringing 4 transfers, 5 freshmen. They do bring back senior point guard Mark Sears. Uh, he's kind of called upon that role of being a leader and a facilitator for that offense that loses, obviously, Brandon Miller. Quinterly transferred to Memphis. So a very, very new team this year for Alabama. They did bring in the number 5 ranked transfer class, according to 24/7 Sports. Uh, Headlined by graduate transfer guard Aaron Estrada, had 20 points per game, 4 assists per game last year at Hofstra. Really good shooter from 3. And then the big one, uh, 6'11" forward Grant Nelson from North Dakota State, averaged 18 and 9 a game last year. So bringing a couple transfers, bringing the 16th ranked class in the country. They got a lot of tests in their non-conference. Neutral site games against Ohio State, possibly Oregon. It's one of those 4-team things. So it's Oregon, or I can't remember who the other team that they could play was. Have a neutral site game against Purdue, and then a road game at Creighton, and a technically neutral site, but basically road game playing Arizona in Phoenix. So crazy non-conference for them to start off, especially with such a new team.
Yeah, like you said, they do lose a lot of players. Obviously, lose Brandon Miller, second overall to the Hornets. Like you said, Quinley in the transfer portal, Memphis, but they do lose Noah Clowney and Charles Bediako, which were 2 huge rim protectors. Bediako averaged 1.8 blocks per game, so that's one of those. That's the thing that is going to be different from last year's Alabama team to this year's Alabama team is they don't have those 2 like twin towers in there. Those 2 like both sides of the post. Either way you're driving, it's going to be tough to score. So they're going to be lacking a lot of that rim protection this year. But I do think that Grant Nelson from North Dakota State is one of the most underrated transfer pickups for this year. I think he's going to fit in very well. And then obviously you throw in Aaron Estrada from Hofstra, averaging 20 points in any realm of college basketball is something that's a standout for sure. I don't think he's going to average 20 in the SEC, But I think with his experience and with his ability to score is going to match up well with this Alabama team.
Yeah, I think Nelson, like you said, probably the key for this team. Hopefully he can, for Alabama's sake, can make that transition to a bigger league as well as with Estrada. I can't remember who was against. I should have wrote this down, but apparently Nelson in one of their secret scrimmages had a great game for Alabama. So we'll be excited to see if that can kind of carry over into the regular season as well. But uh, with a new team like this, a brand new team, losing a lot of guys, like you said, with those big men too. Uh, Gonna be probably a little transition period, especially with that non-conference being so tough. Gonna take some time for this team to gel together. Uh, you bring in 4 transfers, 5 freshmen. It's gonna take a little bit of time. So that's gonna be an Alabama team that I wouldn't be too worried about if they struggle in November and December, because I think they're talented enough that they'll get it figured out for February and March.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, Grant Nelson a couple years ago came into Carver Arena and lit up the Bradley Braves um, with North Dakota State. Same with Bailey Shireman at South Dakota State. I believe he came into Carver Arena and lit up Bradley for like 25 points. Um, so I guess you could say Bradley's kryptonite is North Dakota and South Dakota State. But yeah, Grant Nelson's very good, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the SEC this year.
Anything else on Alabama?
No.
All right. Let's move to Arkansas. Uh, Arkansas 22-14 last year. Sweet 16 loss to UConn after they beat Kansas in the round of 32. Another team that loses a lot, not quite as much as Alabama, but keep a solid base, but fill in holes with 6 transfers. That's what Musselman does. They bring in some talented freshmen, but Musselman owns the transfer portal uh, pretty much year in and year out. You lose Ricky Council, Anthony Black, Nick Smith, Jordan Walsh, all going to the NBA. Big returner for them. Devontae Davis. He took a much bigger role once Nick Smith was out for a majority of the season last year. And then you also have Makai Mitchell, big man, kind of be asked to step up and replace Jordan Walsh's production. Jordan Walsh, not the biggest scorer or anything, but just a great defender for them, great rebounder, and was able to score when needed. They do bring back Trayvon Brazil too, coming back from an ACL tear that he had last year. Uh, I think what I saw was that he should be back for the start of the year, but they're also going to be patient with him, so probably ease him back in. Maybe he'll play at the start of the year, maybe not. Just not trying to rush him back too quick. And then some of their big transfer ads, Khalif Battle from Temple, who's also started at Butler. L. Ellis from Louisville, who had pretty much the only bright spot of Louisville last year. And Tremont Mark from Houston, which I think is going to be a really good get for them. Uh, this is a team that throughout the last couple of years, kind of what I said with Alabama, always usually struggles at the start of the year, then starts to kind of figure everything out in February and March, and then makes a solid tournament run, like we mentioned at the top. Uh, can that solid tournament run turn into a Final Four or not? We'll see. But brand new team, or a lot of new guys, but keeping Devontae Davis and Makai Mitchell's big, but and Trayvon Brazil coming back, but those transfers are gonna have a lot on their plate for Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like I mentioned with last year's Alabama team, they do have 2 guys. Arkansas does 2 guys that are 6'10". They're starting lineup right now with Trayvon Brazil and Makai Mitchell. So kind of taking over with that what Alabama had last year with those great rim protectors. I think the biggest missing piece, the thing that Arkansas is going to miss the most from last year is Jordan Walsh. He was definitely one of the best on-ball defenders in the country, and he was able to guard positions 1 through 5. He kind of was that guy that had that never quit attitude. It seems like whenever he was in the game, that Arkansas always had a chance, and like they always had some amount of fight left in them. And to go along with what you said about with the possible Final Four runs, I think they're going to need a guy like last year who stepped up and like what Ricky Council did for them in the tournament last year, basically just taking over games. I think he mean, he probably averaged like at least 18, 20 points a game in that tournament run. So I think you're going to need to see someone step up and kind of take over that role if they're going to want to make a deep tournament run.
Yeah, you got a lot of options with that. Devontae Davis could be that guy. Khalif Battle could be that guy. Uh, I think L. Ellis will have a little bit lesser role than he had at Louisville, but we'll just kind of see how that progresses. Kind of opposite of Alabama though, they do have won't say an easy non-conference, but a little bit easier. They're in the battle for Atlantis, which is always a tough tournament with a lot of good teams. But besides that, their only other game against a Power Five team is a neutral site against Oklahoma. Uh, so they'll have a lot more opportunities against lesser opponents, like those low majors, to be able to kind of gel everything together. Um, so they'll have some of those tough games with the battle for Atlantis, especially Oklahoma. We'll see how they are this year. We'll talk about that next week. But a much easier non-conference for these guys to all kind of gel together.
And Eric Musselman's one of those guys that you always want to root for him. I mean, I think it was last year or 2 years ago when he had the shoulder brace on, the shoulder strap, the sling on, and
Yeah,
he was like still celebrating. I think one of the games, I think it was Jalen Williams' senior or junior year, where he, like took his shirt off and he was like doing the D Wade and jumping on the scores table and all that stuff. Like he's just such a good guy to root for.
yeah. I Illinois lost to him in the round of 32, so wasn't rooting for him that day. But
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, he is a very likable guy in college basketball. I'm sure he's not very likable amongst other SEC teams. But for for the majority of college basketball, I think he's a guy that's really fun to watch. I think he took his shirt off for the Kansas game last year too, if I remember right. But I could
Tarps
be thinking
off.
of that from a couple years ago. But yeah, Arkansas always a team that, especially in this new era with the portal, reloads real quick with a lot of portal pieces. So we'll see how that all works out for them. But anything else on Arkansas?
No, let's talk Kentucky though.
That's what I was gonna say. Kentucky. This is the last team that I got like a lot of info on, and then I'll give you some quick hits on some other teams. But the last team that I got a real big deep dive on is Kentucky. 22 and 16, second round loss to Kansas State last year. Like we kind of mentioned from the top, been hitting the portal hard the last couple of years, but Cal's kind of going back to his ways of getting that big freshman class, and it's a big one this year. Number one in the country, bringing 10 total freshmen, including the walk-ons. I think 8 or 9 of them are scholarship, but any class with 10 total freshmen in it is insane. The headliners, like you kind of mentioned from the top, Justin Edwards, number 3 in the country, Aaron Bradshaw, number 5, DJ Wagner, number 6, Rod Dillingham, number 21. Wagner and Bradshaw, teammates at Camden High School in New Jersey, so they keep that connection going on to Kentucky. Uh, but right now, the Almanac has projected Wagner, Edwards, Bradshaw, so those top 3 guys, all in the top 6 of the country, projected to be starters, alongside Antonio Reeves, who returns, and Trey Mitchell, the transfer from West Virginia. So freshmen are going to be thrown in the mix right away, and then you have a guy like Rod Dillingham too, that he fell down to 21 in the last official rankings by 24/7 Sports, but at the time was, I believe, the number one player in the country at one time, but definitely was like a top 5, top 10. I mean, he technically dropped, but still to 21 for that to be your 4th best ranked freshman is just insane. Uh, but this team is gonna very freshman heavy, and I think the freshmen are capable of it though.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of I don't I don't think it's to be on the same level, but as far as recruiting classes go, I believe it was 2019 with Zion, Cam Reddish, and RJ Barrett having like I think it was they got 1, 2, and 4. So similar to that with just bringing in three of the top freshmen in the country to come play for Kentucky. They do lose Oscar Tshiebwe, Jacob Toppin, Cason Wallace, Severe Wheeler, and C.J. Frederick. So those are some big pieces that they're missing. But I mean, Cal's been doing this for a while, and he's been doing this reload stuff for a while. So I'm not worried about Kentucky. I don't think they're going to have these past lackluster seasons, as you could say, especially for Kentucky fans. They view them as just terrible seasons. But I think that this whole reload is and how Cal's doing it is going to be okay.
Yeah, I think this is back to what Cal's best at. Uh, I would not say that Cal is on the hot seat if I were a Kentucky fan, but I think it's clear that he is based on the expectations of Kentucky and the lack of that tournament success the last couple of years. Like we mentioned, haven't been to the second weekend, and I think it was 4 years. Uh, so he's going back to what he is known for. What he got his career started off on was bringing in those heavy freshmen between Memphis and obviously Kentucky with some of those huge classes that he had. But this Kentucky team needs to be really good for Coach Cal's sake. Um, they, the expectations at a place like Kentucky are crazy, and like the success that he's had in the last couple of years has been also very good. Besides that one bad year, which I think was the COVID year, I believe,
I think it was
or
the year before they
the
lost
year
St.
that
Peter's.
yeah, the year that started COVID, or that COVID happened and that canceled the tournament when I think they weren't going to make the tournament, if I remember it. I don't know. The years all kind of start to mesh together, but uh, besides that one year that they're really bad, they've had good teams the last couple of years that just haven't quite had the tournament success. So that's huge for Coach Cal. I don't know if I'd go on the step of to retain his job yet, but Kentucky's not happy with what's happened the last couple of years. Kentucky fans aren't, at least. So they need a big year out of Kentucky this year. But they do bring back, like I mentioned, Antonio Reeves. He stays after very weird offseason. There was rumors of him like re-enrolling back at Illinois State, and rumors of him hitting the portal again and seeing if he was eligible to hit the portal. Uh, Based on being able to get that second transfer or not, and whether he could graduate or not. There's like all kinds of things going on. But he's back after all of that. Trey Mitchell is a late ad for them uh, after he left West Virginia after Bob Huggins' resignation or termination. Who knows what ended up with that? But keeping Reeves and adding Mitchell, I think, will be good. Experienced guys. I know Reeves is at least a fifth year. I think Mitchell's in his junior or senior year at this point. So having some sort of experience and some sort of leadership on this team with so many freshmen is nice for them to have back too.
Yeah, I think that if Kentucky doesn't get a 3 seed or higher, people are going to be calling for Cal's job.
Yeah, which is just wild, but it's how
Mm-hmm.
it goes.
I think you can maybe get by with a 4 seed, and then I think that 4 seed all depends on the tournament success. Well, regardless of the seed, it all determines on the tournament success. But if they're not getting a top 3, top 4 seed, that you're going to see Kentucky fans calling for Cal's job.
Yeah, I think honestly, like I think having a high seed matters a lot, but at the same time, like I think if Kentucky struggles throughout the year, and obviously air quotes struggles, if they still are like a 7 or 8 seed, like obviously did not reach the expectations, but still made the tournament and had a somewhat successful year. Even if they end up at that, but they have a Final Four run, uh, I think he's fine. Obviously, he'd be fine after a Final Four run, but I I just don't even know what's going to happen if he doesn't make the second weekend again. Like I I wouldn't be surprised too if Cal just leaves and it's like I'm done with this. Like I can't deal with these expectations anymore. Like you, uh, it's unrealistic to think that year in and year out you're gonna have so much success in the tournament in a tournament like the NCAA tournament that is so up to chance and everything. So the expectations there are wild, but in a one game tournament every year, like win or lose or win or go home every single game, where you don't have these like 7 game series that the NBA has and stuff like that. I think it's not, I guess, for the lack of a better term, not appropriate to put those expectations that there has to be a deep tournament run every single year. But also the lack of having one in the last couple of years has kind of put them in this position. But it all depends. November through March, like 15th or whatever, does not matter at all to Kentucky fans. I feel like it's all going to be what happens in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they're gonna be blinded by it all, and um, I think you're right. If he doesn't make that second weekend, I could very well see him just leaving, and that would be just a roller coaster of an off season.
Yeah, that would be the biggest name in the coaching carousel in a long time. But yeah, anything else on Kentucky?
No,
All right, I'll just run through some quick hits throughout the conference. Chris Beard back into coaching after that whole debacle last year at Texas. He comes back at Ole Miss. Mississippi State brings back all 5 starters. They had a really big roller coaster season last year. They started out 11-0, big win over Marquette, and then followed that up with a 1-7 start in conference play, and then won 8 of their last 11 to end up in, I believe, they're in the first 4. Uh, so wild roller coaster season last year, but Mississippi State brings everyone back, so they're hoping to kind of take a leap off that end of the year. Mizzou brings in 5 transfers, trying to replace a lot of guys like Kobe Brown, especially was a big guy for them last year, and keep that momentum going for Dennis Gates in his second year. Right now, they have the #1 class in the class of 24, so big for Mizzou to kind of keep that momentum going that they started from last year and get another tournament appearance. And then sophomore Riley Kugel for Florida, expected to have a really big year for them, and Todd Golden's second year. Uh, Obviously, only a second year at a program like Florida that's had so much success with those two championships under Donovan. Golden's not going to have a ton of time to get this kind of back on track after the end of the Mike White era went on, but yeah, Riley Kugel is supposed to be a big guy for them for Florida this year. But that's all I got on the SEC. You got anything else?
not really. But the SEC is one of those conferences that, like top to bottom, any team can beat any team at any given night. It's kind of like the Big Ten, I'd say, second to the Big Ten, where there's just a lot of good teams, and especially that SEC tournament when that comes around, like you could be seeing like a 10 seed, go all the way like the semifinals or something like that. So I think it's been our wild year in the SEC.
Yeah, SEC is definitely they're obviously still a football conference, but they've the resources and the money that they put into basketball the last 10 or so years has really turned this league into one of the better ones in college basketball. Whereas I felt like for like 10 years or so, it was, or probably even longer than that, it was just always Kentucky's league all the time. But you're seeing a lot of other teams start to get really good. Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, A&M this year. But yeah, SEC starting to become a much more fun league to watch than it used to be. So excited to see how this year goes for them, because there's going to be a lot of good teams in that league. But ready to go to the Big East?
Yeah.
All right. Again, starting off ranked teams, very top heavy. You got #5 Marquette, #6 UConn, #8 Creighton, then drop down to #22 Villanova, and St. John's in there receiving votes. Some of the storylines from the conference. Can UConn repeat? Obviously, is always the biggest storyline every year, almost, or one of the biggest storylines every year. Or will it be another one of those top favorites like Marquette and Creighton? Can Villanova bounce back after a tough year? I think this is a huge year for Kyle Neptune. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then what's obviously Rick Pitino, biggest biggest news in the coaching carousel this year. What's he going to bring to St. John's in year one? How quickly can he get that turned around? So those are some of the big things going on in the conference this year.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's going to be an interesting year. I think, like we'll get into it later, but if you want to shoot to Marquette, let's go right to Marquette. But Shaka Smart's bringing back almost everybody, and Marquette looks like they're going to be a really good team this year.
Yeah, let's start with Marquette. 29-7 last year. Did get upset in the second round by Michigan State in that 7-2 game. Uh, they lose Omax Prosper to the first round of the NBA draft. Tough loss for them, but they bring back 4 of their 5 starters and 8 of their 9 rotation pieces from last year, guys that got decent minutes. Uh, didn't lose any transfers and didn't add any transfers either. So pretty much running it back for Marquette. They obviously keep Big East Player of the Year Tyler Kolek coming back for his senior year, preseason Player of the Year as well. Um, Also bring back starters and Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, Oso Ighodaro. Uh, they won't have like kind of like what we said with some of the teams in the SEC. Don't really have to rely much on the freshman class they brought in, which is pretty solid. But that relieves some of the pressure from 4-star guys like Trey Norman and Zayd Lowry. The big thing for me with Marquette, they were projected, I think, ninth in the Big East last year, and then obviously had this huge breakout year. And now this year they're right up there. It's kind of pick your spot 1, 2, 3 between Marquette, Creighton, and UConn. So Marquette, some first place votes, some second, some third, but like I said, you can kind of just put those in any order and just see what's going to happen. But what my big thing this year is how is Marquette going to deal with these expectations? I think bringing a guy like Kolek back is huge for that, but much different year for them in terms of those preseason expectations.
Yeah, I think it's always the question when a team that wasn't projected to do too well the year before ends up making a very good run, and with Marquette being that two seed that they were, those are always going to be the questions. If they can keep it going and they can see that same success last year, how are they going to deal with these expectations? So I think it'll be very interesting to see. I mentioned during the SEC preview about the backcourt that Texas A&M has, but the backcourt that Marquette has with Kolek and Cam Jones is very good, and definitely one of the best backcourts in the country. A lot of experience, obviously bringing Kolek back, preseason player of the year, like you said. But I think the biggest question is this like the year that Shaka can get it done? The Final Four run, the national championship game. Can he win that title?
Yeah, he's another one of those coaches. We kind of talked about it with Buzz Williams a little bit too, but a coach that's been around for a long time. Obviously made that Final Four run in 2011 with VCU, but not a ton of other tournament success outside of that. So I think Marquette. We're going to talk about Creighton too in a second. Creighton's another one of those teams. Greg McDermott. Can these guys take that leap to the Final Four? Like I said, Shaka's been there before, but not with Marquette. Didn't have a whole lot of success with Texas after VCU in terms of the tournament. So uh, bringing back all these guys, you mentioned it. Whenever you run it back, it's always, uh, especially with the team that didn't have very much expectations, it's always interesting the next year to see how they kind of deal with that. And now that everyone's kind of like patting them on the back, I think honestly, for obviously you didn't want this last year, but for the success of this year's team, I think losing in that second round to Michigan State helps them a lot. Uh, it's not like a team like FAU that didn't have those national expectations and then ends up making the Final Four, where it's like you feel like that was a very successful season and you feel like everyone's kind of patting you on the back now. And then how do you respond with that or respond to that? Marquette's kind of a little different. They had that great regular season and uh, got like blew past those expectations, and then maybe kind of had that uh, getting used to getting patted on the back a little bit in the tournament with that loss to Michigan State. So I think having that loss last year keeps these guys very motivated, very excited to come back. And like I said, if you bring back 8 of your 9 starting guys from last year and you were a 2 seed, should be pretty good this year. But Shaka Smart making that leap to that next level is going to be huge for them.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very interesting year for Marquette, but I'm riding pretty high on them. I think that the team they got and with Shaka drawing up the X's and O's, that they'll be pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, he's a great coach. Obviously, had a lot of regular season success. Outside of that Final Four run with VCU that I mentioned, looking to see that next level with the postseason success.
And one more thing about Shaka,
Yeah,
I think this whole year fits in very well with his coaching style. He was at VCU for the longest time, and in those mid-major esque teams, you don't see a whole lot of changes from year to year. You might bring in a couple freshmen, maybe get a transfer or two, but like the teams are not changing as much as like these big Power Fives are. So I think that this team and how they're bringing a lot of people back is going to fit in well with how um, he has got his success from.
yeah, yeah, completely agree. Um, we got on Marquette.
Yeah.
Let's go to the defending national champions, the Yukon Huskies. Uh, 31-8 last year. All 8 of those losses, 7 of them come in the regular season, 1 in the Big East tournament. But all 8 of those losses came to Big East teams. They did not lose to a single non-conference opponent throughout the non-conference as well as the tournament, obviously with that national championship. But they lose a lot. 4 guys who made a real big impact for them. Adama Sanogo, obviously Jordan Hawkins, one of the best shooters that we've seen in the game in a long time. Andre Jackson, obviously, was like the motor of that team. And then Calcaterra, um, really good shooter for them, really good veteran for them. They do bring back point guard Tristan Newton for a 5th year, who had a really good national championship game. And Donovan Clingan comes back. His role obviously expands a lot with Sonogo leaving. Um, Klingen's been dealing with some foot issues this offseason, so will be interesting to see how that kind of goes for him. Always big men and foot injuries never usually bode well. So hoping for his sake that uh, they kind of ease in with him and get him fully healthy before the season starts. The biggest thing for them, for me, they had what I think is probably the most underrated transfer this year, and Cam Spencer, sharpshooter from Rutgers, shot 43% from 3 last year. I think he averaged like 12 or 13 a game. So
Yep.
I think
13.
13. He's not going to be Jordan Hawkins, but he's a great replacement for that. Uh, just the way that Hawkins was able to come off screens, hand in the face, didn't matter, was hitting shots at a crazy clip. Uh, so I think bringing in that sharpshooter for them through the transfer portal is huge. And also bring in a very good freshman class, number 4 in the country. You got what's his name, Stefan Castle, uh, 5-star. He's going to be a starter for them. The one concern I have with UConn, which I also have this with Creighton, we'll get to them, but depth is going to be mostly coming from your freshmen, which are good freshmen, but they're still freshmen, and unproven upperclassmen. So that's going to be the big thing for UConn, seeing these guys who didn't really have roles last year or were still in high school last year. Not expected to be star players by any means, but to be very, very good role players for a team that has national championship hopes.
Yeah, I think that concern is pretty accurate there, because last year you obviously have Sonogo, who is just unguardable almost, and whenever he would get in foul trouble or need a breather, they would throw in Klingon, the 7-foot freshman. So that was just almost unfair to be able to just go from Sonogo to Klingon and just be able to rotate those 2 guys. It was just almost um, the offenses were never able to breathe, and the defenses as well. Um, you do talk about Cam Spencer. he fits in really well with how Danny Hurley likes to coach, and he likes those players like you said that run off screens, quick shooters off the ball. I honestly I think um, after they won the national championship in their post game conference, that Danny Hurley might have said something about because you knew that Jordan Hawkins was leaving for the draft. So I
Yeah.
can't remember if I was this is what I heard, but he might have said something about how like next year we're gonna need a guy like that to step up and just who can shoot lights out off the ball, run off screens, that kind of thing. And I think Cam Spencer fits in really well with that. And Danny Hurley's gonna like him a lot. Um, Tristan Newton coming back is huge for him. I think you have that national championship experience coming back, and he's able to control the game very well as one of the better point guards in the country, and he can just control the flow of the game and the offense very well. So that's a big someone very big that they're bringing back.
Yeah, yeah, it's bringing back a point guard is always huge for a team that loses a lot, especially a fifth year guy like we said with Newton, who has that national championship experience. So when you have that lack of depth and are going to be relying on freshmen a lot off the bench, it's really nice to have that point guard leader in your starting lineup that can kind of guide that second unit a little bit. I'm sure Newton's going to be getting a lot of minutes this year. So that's going to be a big key for them. But yeah, UConn, they definitely have the talent to be able to repeat. Repeating is really hard, uh, especially losing those guys like Sonogo and Hawkins. And I think that biggest loss, honestly, is Andre Jackson. Maybe not the biggest, but a very big one that it should not be looked at what he did in the stat sheet. He was one of the best defenders in the Big East, one of the best energy guys. Whenever they were in kind of a lull or anything, Andre Jackson always got him out of it. Uh, so that's going to be big for them, bringing back a senior guard that can kind of take over that role a little bit. Won't be the exact same, but nice to have a little bit. But UConn's gonna be good. UConn's gonna be really good. And it's gonna be fun to see them play.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable saying that UConn's be very good. And the Andre Jackson loss is similar to Arkansas's loss with Jordan Walsh, kind of
Yeah,
two similar guys that play those roles of maybe not on the stat sheet too much, but if you're watching the game, that you always know where they're at in the court.
yeah, exactly. Anything else on UConn?
No,
All right. Let's move on to Creighton, that other team in the top three. Like I said, kind of all interchangeable. Who you got throughout that? 24-13 last year. Had that Elite Eight loss to San Diego State, 57-56. Real close game for that. Point away from being in the Final Four. Um, Biggest news for them, they lose Ryan Nemhard to Gonzaga. Probably the most questioning transfer to come out in this portal. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense that he transferred. It makes sense that he transferred to Gonzaga, like we kind of talked about last week, but just never really made a whole lot of sense to me that he was transferring. So that's a big loss for them, and also Arthur Kaluma, who was a great guy for them for 4 years. They do bring back a pretty good core of Trey Alexander, Baylor Shireman, and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Really, three really good starters for them, and they also bring in a transfer, Stephen Ashworth from Utah State. He's kind of been placed with the role of trying to replace Nemhard. He had a lot of success at Utah State. I think he's going to be really good. And I think the fact that he is a senior also helps a lot too. I think that that transition period for them going from Nemhard to Ashworth is not going to be that difficult with the experience that he has, and I'm assuming the eagerness he has to be competing at a higher level. But another thing, kind of going back like we just talked about with UConn, and very similar to them last year. I think you could argue that Creighton had probably one of, if not the best starting fives in the country last year, but did not really have the depth to keep up throughout the whole game. Obviously, still had a very successful year, but depth is huge, especially in the tournament. But and again, this year they don't really have a lot of it. Uh, they gonna need a lot of a lot of steps up from freshmen coming in, and again, similar to UConn, unproven depth pieces. So that's going to be the big question for Creighton. I think their starting five can compete with anyone in the country, but that depth is going to be a real issue for them.
Yeah, and I think this could be a whole different roster if you go back to that San Diego State game where there was that fluke call with like mere seconds left on the clock, that this roster could be a whole lot different. And maybe Nemhard stays, maybe Kaluma comes back, who knows? Maybe you get more transfer portal players. But you did talk about the depth because last year the pretty much the only guy that was playing significant minutes off their bench was Farabello. And you do bring in another transfer, a former four-star redshirt freshman from Virginia, Isaac Trott. So I think that's gonna help out Farabello and just the rest of the starters. Bringing in obviously a four-star guy. I don't believe he did. I did play all last year at UVA, but UVA is one of the top programs in the nation. So getting another guy to come off the bench is going to be big for Creighton, help out that depth.
Yeah, that's Farabello's definitely going to be expected to take a leap. He struggled at times a lot last year. Had some good games here and there, but struggled a lot for him. So he's gonna have to be a much better player this year if they want to kind of have that more long-term success. But I think this is a team. I think they're adequately ranked in that top. Which one were they? Were they 8? So I think this is going to be a really good team. I think the battles between them, UConn and Marquette, are going to be awesome to watch. But that's my one concern with them. But I mean, they worked through it last year. Like I said, a fluke call away from being in the Final Four. So uh, no doubt that it can work again. But Greg McDermott, another one of those guys that trying to make that leap into the Final Four. So we'll see if this year's the year for him.
Yeah, another key to success. I think it all relies on Ryan Kalkbrenner, uh, probably the best rim defender in the country. With the exception of maybe a couple other guys, but I feel like you can confidently say that he's probably that guy. Um, but last year, whenever they would kind of get into a closer game than it should have, or they kind of got in trouble with games, it was mostly because Kalkbrenner was in foul trouble. They didn't have that guy to come off the bench and relieve Kalkbrenner if he got 2 quick fouls, or he, 4 fouls, and there's still 10 minutes, 8 minutes left to play. So I think that if Kalkbrenner can stay out of foul trouble and be on the floor as much as possible, he played 32.3 minutes last year. So if Greg McDermott can keep playing him like he has been, and he can stay out of foul trouble, that'll be huge for Creighton.
Yeah, that's one of the best defenders in the Big East. One of the best defenders in the country. Keeping him on the floor is going to be huge for him. Also a great offensive player too. Excited to see kind of how that relationship with Nemhard last year between him and Kalkbrenner changes this year with Ashworth and Kalkbrenner. See if they have similar success with that pick and roll and everything like that. But interesting team with bringing back a lot of their core, but lose a key piece, obviously, or a couple key pieces, and kind of try to replace those. So we'll see how that all works out. But anything else on Creighton?
No.
Let's get to Villanova, a team that I am very excited for. They were 17-17 last year, very uh, down year for them in terms of the success that they've had recently. First round loss in the NIT in Kyle Neptune's first year. This is a very talented roster, especially the top 5. They lack a little bit of depth, but I think this is a really good roster. So I think this is time for Kyle Neptune to kind of prove himself uh, as a Power 6 coach. Like, can he be that type of coach? Because the talent they got, you got Justin Moore coming back. Obviously, you lose Caleb Daniels, big one, Cam Whitmore, and also Brandon Slater. But you bring back Justin Moore, who was only able to play in 13 games last year, coming off an Achilles tear from the year before. Eric Dixon comes back, averaged 15 and 7 for them at the in the front court for them. And then you're looking for big production out of a lot of transfer guys you got, and TJ Bamba, Hakeem Hart from Maryland, and Tyler Burton from Richmond. So really good roster, I think. But I think this year's big for Kyle Neptune to kind of prove himself.
Yeah, I think we talk about it in football a lot of like the measuring stick games, where it's like the week 5, week 6, you have two teams that are higher records and they're going at each other. So those games kind of decide the truth of the records of those teams and how good they are. I think that this year is a measuring stick year for Villanova. Obviously, you have huge shoes to fill if you're Kyle Neptune. But I do really like the transfer of Tyler Burton from Richmond. Um, they feel like they play a lot of meaningful games for being a mid-major. But I've watched him a lot. I went on a phase where I bet on Richmond for the longest time, and I think I was like 8-0, and then I just stopped, thankfully. But I got to watch a lot of Tyler Burton, so I like this pickup. Like you said, losing Cam Whitmore definitely sucks. And I think we talked about it when we did our NBA draft review that he probably is a steal of the draft, and right now he's looking like it playing for the Rockets right now.
Yeah, that's a guy who probably should have been the top 5, at least top 10 pick. Losing him is always going to be big. Uh, But I think getting Justin Moore back is huge for them. I think those transfers are big. Like you said, that Burton kid from Richmond, I think is going to be really good. Hakeem Hart, I'm excited to see him. He very good career at Maryland. Kind of see how it translates over to the Big East. Obviously, both Power Six teams, but and Power Six conferences. But uh, just obviously a little different. So we'll see how that transitions. But I think this is a team that can be very successful if led correctly. I think that's the biggest question mark for them.
I also kind of forgot that Villanova still has an archdiaconal on the roster.
They do.
Chris.
Chris Archidiakono. So not quite as good of a player as his older brother, but still around. I think he's coming off the bench, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Archidiakono's still there. Anything else on Villanova?
No, that's it.
All right. Last team that I kind of want to deep dive into, and then kind of similar again with SEC. I'll have some quick hits and everything. But St. John's, 18 and 15 last year, no postseason, completely revamped roster. 10 transfers, 2 freshmen, and 2 guys returning. 9 guys from their team from their roster last year either transferred or graduated. One of those being Posh Alexander, now with the Butler Bulldogs. Excited about that. We'll talk about Butler briefly in a second. Uh, Only significant returner that Patino brought back, Joel Soriano, their big man, averaged 15 and 12 a game last year. Uh, St. John's is going to be interesting because they bring back a lot, or they bring in a lot of successful guys, successful transfers, but low major transfers. Kind of see if they can make that jump. All 5 projected starters from the Almanac averaged double digits, but only one of those was at the Power Six level. That being obviously Soriano, who returns. But you got 2 guys especially. Jordan Dingle, the guard from Penn, averaged 23 points per game last year, and don't want to mispronounce his name, Danis Jenkins, guard from Iona, who Patino brings over with him uh, from Iona over to the what is it? St. John's in the Bronx. No, they're in Queens. The Queens or 2 Queens from Iona. He averaged 16 points a game last year. So you got a lot of guys who had success at lower levels. And trying to see how that translates over. Uh, a lot of people are very high on St. John's. I think that's just the Patino effect. I have my concerns just because I think anytime you bring in a roster of that many new guys, and especially with none of them being proven at the high major level, obviously these guys, like you mentioned earlier, with I can't remember who we were talking about earlier, but someone averaging the kid from Hofstra, averaging 20 points a game. Like any conference in college basketball, it's a really successful player. But different level basketball in the Big East and in all the Power Six conferences. So big thing for them is the transition of that success from one level of college basketball to a much higher one.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, they do lose a big one in Andre Curbelo. If you know me, I'm a huge Andre Curbelo guy. It seems like he never turns the ball over. I feel like I've never actually seen him turn the ball over once. So that's a huge one. I feel like Rick Pitino really wanted him to stay. So that's unfortunate for St. John's.
I think the second that Rick Pitino walked through the doors, that was his first person to tell the transfer.
Yeah, probably. Curbelo probably knew it too.
Yeah, once he saw that Pitino was hired, he's like, "Where do I go now?"
Yeah.
There was
What
no
door should
sticking
I go
around.
out of right now? Um, I think this is kind of going to be similar to what you're seeing in college football right now with Deion Sanders in Colorado.
Yep.
Um, they might be able to pick off a big win at the start of the season, and everyone gets their hopes up. And St. John's, St. John's, St. John's, and it's similar, with Deion pretty much revamping that whole entire team where it's just all new guys, and they haven't. I mean, you've seen it now, but they haven't had that time to just kind of mesh. I think you're going to see some of that similar, the path that Colorado has taken as far as wins and losses go. But this is just the first year. Patino's you got to start somewhere. You're going to build it, and but I think St. John's is in good hands with Patino.
Yeah. Looking at their non-conference schedule, doesn't look like there's going to be too many crazy tests for them, which is nice to ease in. They play Michigan, but it's at home. They do go to West Virginia. They have a sneaky tough game in going to North Texas, or that might be a tournament. But regardless, not too many tough non-conference games for them. So that it should give them a little bit of time to gel a little bit. And like you said, with all those new transfers, very similar to Dion in a way at Colorado. Just like so many new things happening there. That I think this is a team that's definitely capable of picking off a win. They did beat Rutgers in a charity exhibition game, so that's something to look at. Let's see. It looks like they're in the Shriners Children's Charleston Classic. So if they beat or whatever happens with North Texas, that is not a road game. That is a neutral site game. Then they would play either Dayton or LSU, and then one of four teams for that third game. So we'll get a couple, not like huge tests. Like obviously North Texas is a solid team, and Dayton's a solid team, but and LSU is okay, but not really. So like some solid tests, but nothing too crazy. It's not like they're going up against multiple ranked teams or anything in the non-conference. So I think that's really big for them to kind of get that time to get everything figured out, and then I think they will pick a couple teams off in the Big East. I would not be surprised if they pick off a random win either at home or on the road against one of those top three, and just catch them by surprise one night. But I think this year is kind of the figured out year for Patino, where a lot of people kind of want it to just be the year for him. Like obviously, there's no national championship expectations or anything, but I'm sure there's expectations from St. John's to get this thing figured out quick and get in the tournament this year. But I don't know if I would go that far. But it's just gonna be really interesting just with all the new faces there.
Yeah, I also love when St. John's plays games at the Garden.
Yeah.
That's always fun to watch.
Yeah, it'll be nice. They will be in the Garden much more this year.
And there'll actually be fans in the Garden when they do play there.
Yeah, there will be more than like 2,500 people at
Mm-hmm.
St. John's game. Anything else on St. John's?
That's all I got.
Yeah, they bring in some solid freshmen with Simeon Wilcher and Brady Dunlap, but the success of this team will be mostly on the transfers as well as Joel Soriano. But Yeah, I guess some quick hits before we wrap up from the Big East. Bryce Hopkins coming back for Kim English's first year at Providence. Um, Obviously, the big storyline there too is Ed Cooley making the move. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but Ed Cooley making the move from Providence to Georgetown, and Kim English brings back some good guys. Bryce Hopkins obviously being that headliner for him, but Providence could be a team that could be sneaky solid this year. I won't say they'll be great by any means, but I think they're a team that could sneak into the tournament and could have a pretty solid season. Xavier's season is all in the hands of the health of Jerome Hunter and Zach Freemantle, which both uh, their availability is kind of in question. You've heard some people say that they could be back in December or at the latest, like early January, and some people think that they're both going to be out the whole year. So, uh, not having those guys, and obviously losing Sule Boom, they're a great guard, and Kunkel as well, great shooter for them. Uh, going to be tough for Xavier if they can't get Jerome Hunter and Zach Freemantle. Georgetown, like I mentioned, they bring in several Power Six transfers, trying to kind of get this rebuild for Ed Cooley a little bit expedited, going a little bit quicker. Uh, I don't see it, but they do bring in some guys who had some success at the Power Five level, Power Six level. So we'll see how that kind of goes for them. And had to mention the Dogs, Butler Bulldogs, whole new roster pretty much. We only bring back Jalen Thomas, John Michael Malloy, and Connor Turnbull. Bring in, I believe it was 6 transfers, if I'm right off the top of my head, and 3 freshmen, 3 scholarship freshmen, and then 1 walk-on freshman. Need a big improvement this year, in year 2 for Coach Mata. Uh, Last year, just to show the success of Coach Mata, uh, was his first ever sub 500 season in his career, and only his second ever season that he didn't get 20 wins. So I'm expecting that he was not very happy to have that first ever season under 500, and I think we did the things that we needed to do to change that. Uh, so I'm really excited for this year for Butler. We'll kind of just see how it goes. Obviously, not a lot of new faces, but without divulging too much and getting into trouble with the Butler men's basketball office. We've looked good in practice, but we'll see how everything kind of plays out. But that's pretty much all I got on the Big East. You got anything else?
No, I just think that main storyline is just gonna be with Ed Cooley and the Providence Georgetown. That game at Providence is gonna be. We previously already talked about it, but it's gonna be fun to watch.
That might be the most watched college basketball game of the year for like just the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just, uh, but that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm really excited to see that one. But yeah, I guess also the second biggest storyline right now is the big game this weekend at Hinkle Fieldhouse, Butler versus the Ohio Northern Polar Bears. Um, I heard that
Are there polar bears in Northern Ohio?
I don't believe so, but there's
Hmm.
12 of them coming in this weekend
Okay.
to Hinkle, so we'll see how they are. But I heard Gus Johnson's on the call for this one.
Awesome.
Homecoming weekend, that's a story in itself. Senior homecoming going to be spent um, having to just hang out all day waiting for Butler versus Ohio Northern. So excited for that. But yeah, college basketball's pretty much back in terms of almost everyone's either played a game, an exhibition game, albeit, but everyone's almost either played a game or has one coming up this weekend. So getting a lot closer. We are at, I believe it would be 12 days until the start of the regular season at the time of this recording. So it's coming back quick, and we're excited.
Excited is a great word to use there.
Yeah,
It's almost here.
I think this year's going to be a really fun one in college basketball. But obviously, before kind of similar with college football, before a lot of big changes happen in college athletics, I think this is going to be one of those I'm not gonna say one of the last good years because I think even with all the changes, it's still gonna be a good product, and I know that I will definitely still watch it. But one of the last years where things feel a little bit more normal in college basketball. So I'm really excited for it. But anything else on the whole thing?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, that was the SEC and Big East. Next week, I think we're going to try and get two out, uh, wrap up the rest of the Power Six with the Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12, as well as get a overall season preview in as well before the regular season kick tips off, excuse me, on Monday, November 6th. So be on the lookout for some new episodes next week, and appreciate you guys listening.